Travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the low-life Necromancer using Marrow Shards. This is going to be a build that's quite a bit different than most Necromancer builds because it does not revolve around any minions. That's right, there will be 0 minions in this build. Instead, we will be using Marrow Shards and ourselves to do most of the damage. We're going to have Marrow Shards set up to double cast, and it's going to split off and do the Bone Splinters, which will do excellent damage. There's going to be what's hitting really, really hard. And we're going to have it to where it's double casting. So every time you cast it, there's a 98% chance you're actually casting it twice, which is really cool. So it lets you put out a ton of damage. Now we do have Wandering Spirits in there because we just had nothing else on the bar. We have Bone Curse set up to go off on autocast every 6 seconds. And it's going to allow you to apply Bone Curse on hit for 4 seconds. So you'll have some uptime of that, which applies some extra physical spell hits, which is really nice. So you'll be able to put out a lot of damage. We're also taking advantage of, since we're doing a low life build, 2 uniques in 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐢𝐴 and Last Steps of the Living. That's what's going to help you generate so much ward for your high survivability. We're doing this as a Necromancer to take advantage of the 24% increased health that you can get. We also wouldn't be able to use this so much in Reaper form because that doesn't work well as a low life. We also aren't running this with Death Seal because then you couldn't have ward. So that's kind of why I just kind of stayed away from the Lich and went Necromancer with it. On top of that, you're also going to have the interaction where you're converting all of your Leech into extra damage at 10 times its value. So this is what's going to increase a bunch of your damage so that you can do really good damage and clear things quite quickly. All right, let's go ahead and get into the skills, the interactions, and just how it all works. For skills, I'm running Marrow Shards with +2 levels, Wandering Spirits, Bone Curse, Transplant, and Rip Blood. For Marrow Shards, we have this set up so that it will double cast. We also have it set up with Friendly Fire. Since we don't have any minions, we don't care. So we have 7 points in 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐦𝐬𝐬 for the double cast. We have 1 point in Apathy for the extra hit damage, or 25% more hit damage, but you'll be able to hit your own minions, which again is fine as we don't have any. We have 1 point in Bone Knives so that we have more hit damage. However, both Marrow Shards and Bone Splinters will get that 75% more damage, but the Marrow Shards itself will not pierce anymore, which is fine because we want it to splinter as quick as possible. In fact, with 2 points down here in Dead Weight for more hit damage, we have 1 point in Bone Splinters, so that Bone Splinters will be made as soon as we get a hit with the Marrow Shards, so that it will not pierce, but it was going to go ahead and splint anyway. And then we also have 1 point in Marrow Caster, so that we actually can target destruction of our projectile. So when we fire Marrow Shards, it actually doesn't even have to hit an enemy. It's just going to projectile out the Bone Splinters wherever we pointed our mouse, as long as it reached there, or at its maximum distance it will go, or if it hits an enemy. So what this means is you can actually just target right in front of your character. You'll have the Marrow Shards break apart, and it will create the Bone Splinters, which will shoot out in a cone, giving you some decent AoE. The Bone Splinters also hit much harder than the Marrow Shards, so you kind of want to do that before the enemy and make it so that it can hit multiple enemies, but also that it will have more hit damage. So we have 5 points in Carving for 150% more hit damage for the Bone Splinters. Then we have 3 points in Dark Precision for the 6% base crit chance, and 1 point in Ivory Obliteration for some more critical strike multiplier. This will help it almost have 100% crit, and then on top of that, the critical strike multiplier, since we're almost always critting, is going to make it hit a little bit harder. For Wandering Spirits, we have this set up just so that we have a bunch of spirits around us. They're going to give us some ward and some mana. That's basically their main function. They don't do a ton of damage for us. They're basically just there as a filler. We didn't really have anything else that we wanted to put in that spot, since 99% of the time you're just going to be casting Marrow Shards. So I've got 3 points in Spirit Swarm, 3 points in Thin Veil, 3 points in Lingering Souls, 3 points in Souls of Rage, 4 points in Medium, 2 points in Sheltering Spirits so that you'll gain 6 ward every time a spirit expires, and 2 points in Infusing Souls so that we gain 12 mana whenever a spirit expires. So this will give you a ton of mana, it'll give you some ward, just a little extra survivability. It's not that you need the mana either. We were running this where Bone Curse was going to be an aura around you. However, this puts the Bone Curse on yourself, and then you take way too much damage and you'll almost die instantly. So we came away from that. You don't really need the mana, but if you decide to use something like Wandering Spirits or Transplant or something that's going to cost mana, say you threw in Dreadshade and a Golem or something, this mana back will be able to help you out without having to put any mana regen on your gear. For Bone Curse, we just have this set up so that when we use Bone Curse, it'll have a cooldown so we can put it on autocast so we don't even have to think about it. And then you'll be able to apply Bone Curse for a few seconds on hit after you've cast it, which allows you to just place it by hitting things with the Marrow Shards and the Bone Splinters. So we've got 2 points in Conflation, 2 points in Defile Defenseless, and then we have 3 points in Marrow Thief, and this is also going to give you a chance. Anything that you kill that has Bone Curse on them, it's not that Bone Curse has to get the kill, it's just that Bone Curse has to be on them. You have a 30% chance for Bone Armor, which is going to give you some extra damage reduction, which is really nice. Works really well with the low life build. And you're going to have Bone Curse on a lot of things that you kill, so it's going to be very possible to have Bone Curse or Bone Armor up a ton. We also have 3 points in Iron Maiden, 1 point in Bone Eruption, 1 point in Acute Infliction, 1 point in Illusion of Pain, 3 points in Brittle Bones, and 4 points in Cursed Limbs, so that after you have used Bone Curse for 4 seconds, you will apply it on hit. Now, there was the Signet of Agony, and I was trying this, but putting Bone Curse on yourself, while it was sweet to have it as an aura being applied to all enemies, which basically guaranteed that you were going to have uptime of Bone Armor always going off, having Bone Curse on yourself meant that every enemy that hit you was doing like 10 times extra damage because the Bone Curse was kind of doing your damage on yourself. And if you got like 20 hits in a row, instead of only taking a couple hundred damage out of your ward, instead you were taking thousands, which was ridiculous. And it just gets you killed even in unempowered content. So I kind of recommend staying away from that unless that gets fixed in the future to not be put on yourself. For Transplant, we have this set up to give us some mana and will also give us some Bone Armor. It'll also cast Rip Blood 3 times for us. We've got 3 points in Bone Armor, 3 points in Apostasy, 2 points in Plated Bone, 1 point in Acolyte's Fervor, 3 points in Dance of Blood so that we will cast Rip Blood 3 times when we use it. Rip Blood will be set up to give us ward instead of health. 1 point in Scarlet Rain, 1 point in Rain of Blood, 1 point in Depravity, 2 points in Sadism, 3 points in Pale Blood. And this will give us some extra missing mana back if we are missing any. And then for Rip Blood, we just have this set up to give us ward. That's really all we're going to use it for. There's really no other purpose. Again, just another filler skill that we'll never manually cast. We got 1 point in Eviscerate, 5 points in Splatter, 2 points in Arcane Absorption, 1 point in Rip Spirit, 1 point in Arcane Fortress, 1 point in Hemomancer, 5 points in Quenching, 1 point in Hematology, and 3 points in Mana Feast so that we could get mana back with all the Rip Blood hits that we get. For passives, I've got 21 points in the base Acolyte class, with 2 points in Blood Aura, 5 points in Blood Pact, 8 points in Forbidden Knowledge, 1 point in Mania of Mortality, and 5 points in Unnatural Preservation. And this is going to give you ward retention, necrotic, and poison resistance, which is really useful. Then we have 22 points in the Lich, with 10 points in Apocrypha, 2 points in Survival of the Quarrel, 8 points in Dance with Death, 1 point in Hollow Lich, 8 points in Unclosing Wounds, and 8 points in Crippling Insight. And I don't know why it says 22, couldn't get it to go over that, but there's actually much more than that. We actually have 12, 20, 28, 36, 37. We actually have 37 points in this skill tree, which is normal. This should say 37. Don't know why it says 22. It always seems to get stuck right at that point. I think it has something to do with hitting the gate. But with this, we have those points in here. The 8 points in Crippling Insight is going to give you a bunch of intelligence. The 8 points in Unclosing Wounds is going to give you a ton of extra damage. And then you want to make sure that you've converted all of your health leech into increased damage. We also take advantage of Apocrypha for the 10 int. And the 8 points in Dance with Death gives you another 120% increased damage, since we'll always be at low life. So tons of damage that you can get in the bottom half of this tree. Then we go into the Necromancer with 53 points, 8 points in Elixir of Hunger, 5 points in Reclamation of Souls, 10 points in Cursed Blood, and believe me, there's not really a whole lot of spots to put points in the bottom half of this tree, as most of them are minion related, and that's why they're just where they're at. If you want to move them around, feel free. We got 2 points in Wisp Reaver, 8 points in Tyrant for that 24% increased health, 5 points in Frantic Summons for extra cast speed, 5 points in River of Bones for increased critical strike chance, 10 points in Hearsay, which gives you additional intelligence, and that'll be it for this entire tree. Basically, there's not a whole lot you have to have, so again, passives are not really a big thing. I would put into the Lich tree first, and then do the Necromancer tree afterwards. For idols, items, blessings, and uniques, like I said, there are 2 uniques that you need in this build. We have 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐦𝐻𝐬 and we have Last Steps of the Living. 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐬 is going to be a total RNG. You just have to keep playing until it drops for you. It does start dropping at level 23. Last Steps of the Living being a unique boss Forcemos that you'll have to battle a few times. And I believe the drop rate is now 50% for it. It does not have to be empowered content in order to get this. For our blessings, we have some, or for our idols, we have some 1x4s. This will increase the projectile speed of Marrow Shards, and it will give you increased spell, physical, critical strike chance. You can get that on the 1x4s. On the 1x3s, you can get increased spell, critical strike chance. And then for the 1x2s, we have increased and flat health to give you more health so that you'll generate more ward. This will open up a couple of 1x1 slots. And for me, I just went with some fire resistance to help cap that out. Now, it's okay not to have capped resistance. I'll cover this later, but because you're just generating so much ward, this is one of those rare builds where not having capped resistance, which is very hard to do in this build, you'd have to have some really great gear to do it, isn't going to hurt you all that much. You'll still be able to do empowered content quite well. For items, I'm just going to hover over them, but for the most part, the main things that you want: cast speed, spell, critical strike chance, a regular critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier, and physical damage. Other than that, you want all your resistance, and then stack as much health as possible. Health is almost more mandatory than resistances. You want some resistances, but make sure that you get as much health as possible, as that amount of health, or the amount of health that you have, which will generate even more ward, will equal so much ward per second, it's going to outdo most of the damage you take. Now, if you're planning on going high up into corruption or pushing the arena competitively, you would obviously want to be able to cap your resistance, get your 100% critical strike avoidance, which we do have in this build, and then you would also want to get maxed endurance. And be able to do that, you're going to have to really compromise between blessings, passives, and even maybe take away some of your idle slots for more resist to really cap them out. For blessings, nothing special here. There is no game-breaking, build-enabling blessings for this build. Just get whatever you get. Now, obviously, some things will be better. Get some critical strike avoidance. You can get increased armor for damage reduction. But overall, the main things here, you can get some of your resistances here. You can get some physical armor shred here. But for the most part, none of these matter. None of them are going to make or break the build. So don't be too worried about having to farm blessings. For the character sheet, we have just over 2,300 health. Now, you can get much more than this. There's no exalted gear on this build, so if you had exalted hybrid health, flat health, or increased health on the helm, on the belt, on the gloves, all of that's going to increase this much more massively. You can also exchange out your idols, and you can put more hybrid health idols on. You could get to 3,500, even 4,000 health is possible on this if you have some really good gear and you put more idols towards health. What that'll do is almost double your ward amount of generation, and your survivability will go up even more, allowing you to push into the high corruption. Now, with this build here, you can probably go to about 200 plus corruption. At 110 corruption, which is what I was pushing, there's absolutely no problem. I'm not dying anywhere. You can take a ton of hits. You have so much ward generation, and if it ever does start to dip down, you can literally just transplant and run away, because you're generating that. You don't depend upon leech. You don't have to do hits, and you are a ranged character, so you can hit from a distance. So you can definitely push into the corruption. Again, having even more health is going to have you push even higher than what I would be able to do with this character here until I got better gear. Now, we're not capped on all resist. We do have quite a bit of resist. Cold is our weak link at the point. I just didn't get a really good rule of that on the gear. I would definitely want to improve that before going on. But again, it's not a problem in Empowered as a low life build. We have so much ward generation, we can easily overcome that. We don't have a ton of armor, no dodge in this build. You can see that our damages seem like they're incredibly high, but that's just because we have all of our leech converted to damage, which is giving us a ton. Now you can see we have almost 700% physical damage. You can definitely get more than that. I have no physical damage increase on any of my gear. For defense, we are capped on critical strike avoidance. However, we are not capped on endurance. Again, endurance isn't really going to help you on this build as you are low life. However, if they do eat through your ward and you just have that little bit of life, you never know when that extra 40%, if you could somehow fit it on here, might help you just a tad. But for the most part, it's just an unnecessary affix for this build. So for skill rotation and how I play the build, I like to put Wandering Spirits and Bone Curse both on auto cast. So Bone Curse will go off. As soon as it goes off, you'll have Bone Curse on hit for 4 seconds. Wandering Spirits will just do their thing. They can kill trash mobs pretty well, even in empowered content. They actually do pretty good damage now. My damage tooltip for them is 7,665, which is pretty good since we're not really building into them. Now, it's because they are a spell and they're based on intelligence. That's why it's kind of gone up, but we haven't built into any necrotic or damage over time for them. The fact that they're based on our damage and we've converted all damage sources or all leech sources into damage is why our necrotic damage is so high, which really boosts them as well. So they actually do pretty decent damage for you, and if you just run through, they'll kill a lot of the trash mobs for you, so you don't even have to worry about them. But all you do is transplant around when you're in danger. You'll have Rip Blood automatically go off for you, and then you just spam the Marrow Shards. Now again, Marrow Shards, you can aim it out and you can see it doesn't break until it gets to where I pointed or until it hits a target. Now Marrow Shards itself, if I aim past this, the Marrow Shards itself is only hitting for about 20k damage, and that's when it crits. The Marrow Shards, however, is hitting for a lot more damage. If I hit it with Marrow Shards, you'll see that we're getting 40 to 50k damage, and we're getting 2 hits every time that doubles. Now you can see we don't have 100% crit in this build. You can definitely build into spell critical strike chance a little bit more than I have. We do have very high, we're about 70% critical strike chance with it, but you can see we're actually hitting pretty hard, and you're getting that 30 to 50k hits. You're getting 2 of them because you're double casting, or at least 98% of the time, and it's actually a ton of damage, and it works really well against single targets, especially since you can see how much ward we're at. Because of the amount of intelligence and ward retention we have, we can actually sit around 5,800 ward just with this build. Now, if you were to have 4,000 life, if you just built directly into life, had some exalted gear, went all idols with that, you would deal a little less damage, but you would sit closer to about 8,000, 9,000 ward, which is absolutely crazy. And you would be generating about 1,500 ward per second, which is absolutely ridiculous. You would be able to easily go into 200, 300 corruption plus without a problem. You'd even be able to probably push the arena quite well. However, Marrow Shards as the main skill can feel a little clunky at times, but overall, it's a fun way to play a Necromancer if you don't want to use minions, and trying to hit things in the large AoE is kind of nice. For leveling this build, this is not a build that I would level from level 1 up. In fact, Marrow Shards can hurt you a lot, especially in early game, because you don't want to do low life. You can't wear 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐦𝐸 till 23. You can't wear Last Steps of the Living till level 63. And ideally what would happen is you'd be consuming your own life. You'd be trying to out-leech it during the campaign, and it would feel very, very painful. This is a transitional build. I wouldn't transition to this until later. I recommend using my 1 to 75 Necromancer leveling guide, which has zombies and minions inside of it. A very easy leveling guide to follow, and it does a ton of damage. It's going to get you through the campaign relatively easily, and then you can transition to this probably level 63 at the earliest if you already have 𝐒𝐭𝐦𝐦𝐸 and Last Steps of the Living together to go into the low life format. You'd have enough passive points at that point to build into the Lich first and be able to get all of your Leech converted to damage. You'd be able to get some extra damage there, and it would feel really good about level 63 if you had all the parts ready to go, threw on a two-handed staff, had some gear built into physical critical strike chance or spell critical strike chance, and some idols that could help you with either health or even more physical spell critical strike chance. That's how I would level it. Again, wouldn't level from level 1, would transition at level 63 plus from a different build, because this is going to probably feel really painful leveling with since it consumes your health. And that'll be it for this guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, stay safe and enjoy some gameplay.
Feel my wrath. Wither before me.
By the same chains, traveler, nothing will remain. All will be erased. Nothing will remain. This is nothing. The end will come all the same.